My name is Miriam Cole. I turned 69 last winter, the kind of birthday you mark with a cup of tea and a neat line drawn through the date on the calendar. I taught literature for years at the small college in Rainbridge, Oregon, until I retired to care for my husband through the last quiet season of his life. After he was gone, it was me, the peeling farmhouse, and a garden that had learned my habits better than any neighbor. The morning the courtroom filled my hands rested on my skirt like two obedient birds. Noah, my 12-year-old grandson, sat to my right in a blue blazer he had outgrown at the wrists. Across the aisle, his mother, Sabrina Hale, smoothed a silk sleeve, the pale color of pressed lilies. The bailiff called us to order, wood echoed, and Judge Ortega asked Sabrina's attorney to begin. He belongs with his mother, the man said, and I could feel the sentence try to settle over the room like a blanket. It didn't take. The judge turned to Noah. Do you want to say anything? Noah's jaw squared in that careful way boys practice when they're trying not to look afraid. He stood, reached into his pocket, and brought out the battered phone I'd given him last fall, the one with a spiderweb of cracks skittering from the top corner. His voice was steady, almost gentle. I recorded something last night, he said. I think it matters. For a heartbeat, the vents hummed and a pencil rolled somewhere behind us. Noah stepped forward and handed the phone to the clerk. The first voice on the playback was Sabrina's, crisp and impatient, the kind of tone that makes glassware ring. She'll never keep that house, Sabrina said on the recording. As soon as I get Noah back, we list it. 4 million easy. A man's voice followed someone I'd seen once, all cologne and new sneakers. And the trust, 50,000 a year for raising him. Sabrina laughed, small and bitter. He'll be over his father by spring. There was a ripple, the sound of a room forgetting it was a room. I kept my eyes on Noah. He didn't look at anyone. He simply returned to his seat and folded his hands like he had practiced it. I had heard that clip before in my kitchen when the night still had its coat on. I don't want to go back there, Noah had whispered after pressing play. I had listened without speaking, because there are moments when words are a draft under the door and you only make the candle flicker. The day after the funeral for my son Evan, the house had been busy with the wrong kinds of objects. Casseroles arrived with their foil hats, cards lined the entry table in a stack that listed to one side, and somebody forgot a sweater with reindeer antlers stitched in the hem. When the door finally stopped opening and closing, the quiet felt like something that had weight. I lit a candle near Evan's photograph, the frame he'd chosen himself when he was 20 and too cool to pretend he liked the picture I liked better. Grandma Noah stood in the doorway, barefoot, pajama bottoms too short. The stuffed fox he calls Scout tipped sideways under his arm. His hair was damp and flattened like he had washed it without remembering why. Couldn't sleep, I asked. He shook his head. The house feels loud. We sat on the sofa. He tucked his knees and I could feel the sharpness of his shoulder against my side. Do you think Dad's okay? He asked, staring at the candle the way you stare at a window on a moving train. I think he's at peace, I said, and hoped the truth was in that sentence somewhere. He waited. Then, in a voice that tried not to tremble, he said, Can I live here? The question didn't sound like an experiment. It sounded like a key turned slowly in a lock you already know is the right one. I asked him why. He told me his mother said she needed space, that he would be better off with me for a while. That she had a flight to make. He said it the way kids report the weather. You're safe here, I told him. Always. I didn't say anything about Sabrina because I have learned that children don't need help carrying other people's anger. That week, I started keeping a notebook, again brown leather, the elastic tired from years of being pulled over the same corners. I noted what time Noah ate, the hour he woke, the dates of calls, what he said, and how he said it. A teacher's habit, maybe. Or a gardener's mark, the frost mark, the bloom. A few nights later, my phone lit up near midnight. The screen said Noah in the font my daughter-in-law insists is cheerful. Noah's face appeared in a patch of weak bathroom light. Don't tell Mom I called, he whispered. Please. We can talk a minute, I said. Are you all right? He lifted his arm to rub his eye and a bruise the color of a summer plum slid into view where his sleeve had ridden up. I bumped the table, he said quickly. Or when she pulled me upstairs because I was slow. He added the last part like it was the wrong answer on a quiz he hoped might still get partial credit. I felt my own breath choose caution. Thank you for telling me, I said. After we hung up, I wrote the time, the exact words the size of the mark, the way he had swallowed between sentences. The next afternoon he called from a tablet he said was only for games and spoke in a whisper. You learn when you are defending a small country of your own. Sabrina came 3 days later with the definite steps of a person who's already decided the conversation ended before it began. She opened the door without knocking and stood in the foyer as if she had paid for the floorboards by the square inch. I'm taking Noah home, she said. There was a suitcase near the stairs. She pointed at it the way you point at a dog that needs to get off the sofa. Noah dropped his crayon. He slid behind me and gripped my cardigan fingers cold. I could feel the ripple of his breath. Let's sit and talk, I said. There's nothing to talk about, Sabrina answered. He's confused. You're making him a replacement for your son? The word landed with a dull sound. He is not replacing anyone, I said. He is your child. He is my grandson. He belongs with me. Then you should have stayed the night we put his father in the ground, I heard myself say. And the sentence surprised me by how true it sounded once it existed in the air. Sabrina's mouth went thin. For a second I thought she might soften into the person Evan used to insist I had not given a fair chance. Instead she crouched so she was eye level with Noah. Pack your things, she said in a voice made of sugar and knives. Your room is waiting. I want to stay, Noah said. Sabrina looked at me. Saturday, she said. He's coming with me. Don't make this harder. When she left the door shut harder than the hinges preferred, Noah's grip eased and I could feel his apology rise before he could find its shape. You have nothing to be sorry for, I said. 2 mornings after that, Harold Ng Evans' attorney knocked on my door carrying a briefcase that looked like it had been somebody's father's before it was his. He sat at my kitchen table and arranged documents like a patient card player. Outside the wind worried the cedar and the cat from the neighbor's porch performed a full survey of my steps. Your son updated his will 6 months ago, Harold said. He left his estate, the house, the land, associated assets to you and Noah as co-beneficiaries. He slid the page toward me. Estimated value just over $4 million. The number looked expensive and irrelevant at the same time. What mattered was the way my name and Noah's touched on the paper as if the ink knew something about how grief and obligation braid. The front door opened fast enough to bruise the wall. Sabrina stood there, hair immaculate, breath high. Say that again, she demanded. She didn't wait for us to comply. She snatched the top page and read, eyes moving like they were chasing something. Her jaw worked. He wouldn't do this to me. Harold cleared his throat. He did it to protect his son. Sabrina turned to me. You put this idea in his head. He didn't ask me, I said. He knew what he needed to know. Her hand shook. For a second, something like shame cracked the gloss on her face. Then it was gone. This isn't finished, she said almost evenly. She set the paper down with care that did not match her voice and left heels ticking a metronome across the porch. After the door closed, the kitchen resumed its ordinary sounds, the clock, the kettle beginning to think about a boil. Harold slid an envelope across the table, Evan's handwriting, tangled on the front. I didn't open it then. I watched Noah trace the wood grain with one fingertip as if memorizing a road. He sat very straight, hands folded, the posture of a boy who has learned that sometimes silence travels further than speech. The candle on the sideboard held a steady flame. Outside, a crow lifted from the fence and cut the afternoon in two. After Harold left the kitchen, reclaimed its ordinary rhythm kettle ticking toward a simmer, the clock nudging the minute hand along like a careful usher. The envelope with Evan's handwriting waited between us as if it were listening. Noah traced the wood grain a final time, then excused himself to finish a math worksheet. He said he'd already finished twice. I carried the envelope to the dining room where light fell in a long band across the table. My name on the front looked like Evan had written it slowly, each letter set down, as if it needed its own breath. Inside a single sheet, a signature at the bottom that pulled a little to the right the way it always had, and taped beneath the flap a small silver USB in the shape of a key. The note was not legal language. Evan never wrote that way to me. He wrote like my student from years ago who had once turned in an essay that began with a memory instead of a thesis. Mom, if I can't be there, make the house a door. Noah can walk through without knocking. He looks for you first when he's scared. I've seen it. Don't argue with that. Let him keep his good. He didn't mention Sabrina by name. He didn't have to. Between the lines sat what he couldn't fix in time. I folded the paper back along the crease and set the key-shaped drive on the tablecloth. When I plugged it into the old laptop, a single file blinked to life, Yard Summer, Dabsembo. MOV. The camera was propped somewhere near the porch rail. Late light, that soft organ gold, washed the picture clean. Evan's voice came from off-screen, easy and unguarded. Buddy, say it again, he laughed. Noah, smaller, breathless, ran through the frame, holding a garden hose that misted everything within 10 feet. Home base, he shouted, a streak of wet hair pasted to his forehead. The picture shifted. Evan stepped into the frame, lifted Noah as if he were still light enough to carry anywhere, and kissed his temple. Then Evan looked straight at the camera as if he were looking at me in some tilted future neither of us wanted. If this ever matters, he said softly, my mother is the person who will make him safe. Keep him with her. The clip was 42 seconds. When it ended, the porch returned to being only boards and air. I copied the file to an external drive, labeled it with the date I guessed it had been filmed, and wrote a single line in my notebook. Evan Summer Video Direct Statement, our Noah's care. That night, the forecast promised rain and kept its word. The first drops were light enough to be mistaken for the sound of a magazine slipping from a coffee table. Then the wind turned and the downpour found its shape. I put an extra quilt on the back of the sofa and left the porch light on out of habit. The storm made the house smaller, huddled our rooms like shoulders touching on a bus. The pounding on the door came just after 2. a rhythm too fast to be a branch, too uneven to be a stranger with patience. When I opened it, Noah stood on the top step with Scout the fox zipped inside his hoodie and a backpack slung low. Rain glossed his hair to his head. His lips were blue at the edges. "Don't make me go back," he said before hello. I pulled him inside, flipped the deadbolt, and towed a towel across the entry in case the floor decided to complain. He shook not dramatically, just the small tremor your body keeps for itself when it's finished being brave outside. "We'll get you dry," I said. "Kitchen first." He changed into one of my oversized sweaters, the gray one with the elbow patches I hadn't been able to throw away, and the sleeves swallowed his hands. I warmed milk with honey and a pinch of cinnamon in the saucepan I always use for porridge. He stood on the rug and watched the liquid swirl as if it were a small weather system he could understand. When I handed him the mug, he cradled it with both sleeves hiding his fingers. "What happened?" I asked when he had taken a few careful sips. He flicked a glance toward the window, black glass rain printing a script no one could read. "She went out," he said. "I heard the door. I waited. The clock said 1:30-something, and it smelled like her perfume, and the hallway light stayed on, and he stopped. Not from a lack of will, but because the sentence didn't know how to end." "Did you get hurt?" I asked evenly. He shook his head. Then he hesitated and pulled his right cuff back just far enough to reveal a fingerprinted mark smudged across the inside of his wrist, faint like a bruise on the way in or on the way out. Only when I was slow, he said in a voice that didn't belong in a 12-year-old mouth. I set the mug down. "You're here," I said. "That's enough for now." He fell asleep on the sofa an hour later, Scout tucked under his chin, rain tapering to a soft percussion that made even the refrigerator sound sympathetic. I sat in the armchair and wrote without looking at the page. Just the facts: time arrival, clothing wet wrist. One mark right side, oval, roughly nickel-sized. I didn't write what I wanted to write. The notebook is not for wanting. At 9 o'clock, tires slid across gravel and a fist snapped against the door, sharp official. Through the sidelight, I saw a Rainbridge patrol car and Sabrina climbing out of the passenger seat with her coat unbuttoned like a cape. A young officer stood beside her, holding a clipboard he didn't seem old enough to own. "Ms. Cole," he said when I opened the door, "we received a report about a missing juvenile." "He isn't missing," I said. "He's sleeping." Sabrina pushed past the officer's shoulder. "You took him," she said. The vowel "in" took stretched like a tight wire. "Open the door wider." I didn't move. "You can speak to him in the kitchen," I said, "but you'll use your quiet voice." The officer cleared his throat. "Let's keep this simple. Is Noah here?" Noah appeared in the doorway behind me, sweater sleeves past his hands. He seemed to have grown into himself by the amount that sleep can give a body. "I came on my own," he told the officer. "Grandma didn't take me." "Let's sit," the officer suggested, already easing a pen from behind his ear. He had the kind of face that blushes when people shout. "I need statements." We sat at the kitchen table like we were rehearsing a scene we would never perform again. Sabrina's perfume arrived a half-second before she did. She leaned forward, elbows on wood. "We're going home," she told Noah, not looking at me. "I want to stay," he said, not looking at her. The officer wrote something that sounded like a pencil clicking. "All right," he said carefully. "I'm not removing him today. I'll reference the existing court matter and file, and my report will note both statements. Ms. Hale, you'll want to coordinate through counsel." Sabrina's mouth turned to glass. She stood so abruptly her chair tapped the floor like a knuckle. "This is ridiculous," she said, but she didn't argue with the badge. She walked out saying something to her voicemail on the way down the steps that I decided not to remember. When the patrol car eased away, the house exhaled. Noah kept his seat. He traced a circle in the condensation his mug had left, then wiped it away with his sleeve like a magician undoing a trick. After breakfast, I pulled the teacher's box from the hall closet, the one I hadn't opened since I retired. Inside were index cards, a portable digital recorder the size of a business card, and a handful of sticky tabs, still faintly lemon-scented. I placed them on the table. "There's a thing I used to require of my students," I said. "When we read long novels, they kept reading logs, dates, quotes, what they noticed, sometimes what they felt. It made a path they could follow later without getting lost." Noah watched me the way he watches a recipe. "You and I can do something like that." I said, "If anything makes you uneasy, if words are said, and you're not sure what to call them, you can press this button." I showed him the recorder. It beeped politely. "You can also use your phone, rename each file with the date and time. If you prefer video, do video, but only if it's safe. The rule is simple: you don't put yourself at risk to get a file." He held the recorder the way you hold something you weren't sure you deserved, careful fingers at the edges. "Do I show you everything?" "If you want to," I said. "Or you can keep it until you're ready." He nodded once as if we had just agreed on the beginning of a language. That afternoon, I made space on the laptop and created a folder with a plain name, End Notes. Inside, I made subfolders labeled with dates. On the first index card, I wrote who, what, when, where. Use your words. I didn't draw arrows or emphasize anything. He knows how to read. We tested the recorder. His first entry was a whisper close to the microphone so the air sounded like a seashell. Noah, Friday 3:07 p.m. I'm okay. He cleared his throat. The house smells like cinnamon. Scout is clean again. He stopped the